Welcome. It's episode 137 of Grow Yourself Up. And today I want to talk to you about needs, our own humanity, and shame. And first of all, I want to say, if you haven't left a review, please can you go and leave a review or a rating if you're enjoying the podcast and you find it supportive. So you can leave a written review on Apple Podcasts. I think that's actually the only place for written reviews. And you can leave other reviews on Spotify or, I don't know, other platforms that you listen on. But I would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a review. And also, the podcast is actually on YouTube. And at present, there are not that many subscribers. So I'd love it if you would go along to YouTube and you can just search for my name, for Cath or the podcast Grow Yourself Up, and go along and subscribe. And you can see me doing the podcast and some of the guest episodes. And you'll see me doing all my hand movements and I'm talking to myself and doing anything. So go along and have a look on YouTube if you're interested in seeing a video version. Okay, so let's get stuck in. It's 137, and I'm conscious this is going to be released in early June, and we are heading into the summer period and the holiday period. The holiday period, it's often not really much of a holiday for people who have children, but the school holiday period. And I really want to talk to you about your own needs and the things that resource you and how you can make your own life more manageable by really tending to yourself. So needs are really, really, really important because meeting your own needs is really the seat of your power. It's where you can kind of access your own strength and be able to be in touch with what it is that helps you really do well on a daily basis, what helps you live well, what helps you love well, what helps you really be yourself. And many of us are unfortunately disconnected from our own needs because of how our needs were tended to in our family of origin. And so part of a recovery or healing journey for many of us is learning about what are our needs, what does that even mean? And starting to become aware of them and then starting to meet them. So you could think of needs as the things that resource you every day to actually kind of survive. So we have basic human needs, like we need to eat. If we don't eat, we faint. We have blood sugar crashes. Over time, we would starve to death. So we have to eat. We have to drink, because we need to be hydrated. We can't think clearly when we are not hydrated. We often will overeat if we are hydrated because we mistake thirst for hunger. We start to not be able to think clearly when we haven't drunken and eaten enough. We're much, much more likely to burst right out of our window of tolerance when we haven't eaten and drunken enough, because we essentially have what looks like psychiatric symptoms when we have massive blood sugar spikes. So we really want to be very mindful about how we eat and drink to help ourselves. We have needs for sleep. We have needs for connection. We have needs for joy. But all of us have different needs. And I want to speak about this in a bit of detail because I talked about this in the episode I did recently, I think on ADHD, and a number of you wrote to me. A bunch of you said, wow, some of those things that you said, I had always thought basically someone else needed to approve of my needs before I could have my needs met, or that my needs were not relevant if other people didn't think they were important. And that's a huge, huge thing for us, because for many of us, we've been shamed for our needs for connection, particularly if our parents couldn't be emotionally available for us. We've been shamed for our needs for comfort. So we think anything around connection or comfort or reassurance is needy. We label ourselves like that. Or just anything that was seen as inconvenient to our parents, we kind of try and split off and block out of our own awareness. So if you are angry or you're feeling full of rage or you're feeling bored, or if you're feeling humiliated, or some emotion that was not really allowed in your family of origin, you may find it really difficult to tend to that now. You might not want to notice that emotion in yourself. You might not want to notice what it's bringing up or what it's trying to signal. You might just want to kind of squash it and send it away. And so, if you were only, like if you were going on a long car journey and they would never stop for you to go to the loo, you might have a lot of anxiety around the loo. You may basically hold in wee constantly because you were never allowed to stop. You weren't allowed to listen to the signals of your bladder and actually go when you needed it. Or if you could only eat at times that were designated by your parents, then you may have a kind of confused relationship with your hunger signals. And yes, I understand that in families we try and manage eating times, and everyone does it slightly different in their family. But when we have not been allowed to tend to what our body asks for, we have a very confused relationship with what we need now, because the people who originally tended to us were not very attentive. They weren't very attuned to what we might need. So it's a process of recalibration, of exploration, of becoming aware, and of allowing the meeting of those needs in adulthood. And this is an iterative process, and it can take, a long time. This doesn't just happen in like a week or even a year. There will be layers and layers of this to peel off. Okay, so I'm just going to read you something which I want to kind of highlight. So your needs are valid even if no one else has the same need. So in my family, I have needs that are different to my children and my husband. I have maybe more needs for silence. I have some needs for being alone sometimes. And my husband also actually has needs for being alone. So we can provide that for each other. But my children would happily be with me all the time. So their need is to be with me all the time, and my need is to have some space from them. And so we have to kind of facilitate that. So I get some time away from them, and then my husband is the loving parent with them. And so it's a kind of a negotiation around that. But just because someone else can spend 24/7 in the company of their children doesn't mean that my need for some space or some peace and quiet is invalid, or that it makes me bad. So we really have to allow ourselves to notice what our needs are and to seek to get those met. Some people are really energized by being around other people. I am really energized by being around other people, and I also find it exhausting. So I need rest days. Continuous socializing for me, I find really exhausting, because then I feel like I'm stuck in on all the time. And so I need, I've got a friend who like a sort of a holiday that she loves is, she lives in a different country, and she would come to a country if she's got friends or family and go around and visit them on like a big road trip. And I find that really exhausting, like the going to lots of different places and the packing up constantly and kind of performing along the way. I find that exhausting, and there's so many transitions. I could maybe do that if I had like periods in between by myself, or like got to stay in a hotel for a while. And I used to think that I was very like antisocial, or I used to label myself weird, because that type of holiday doesn't sound like a holiday to me. It sounds like an exhausting performance. But I don't have to label myself either way. I don't have to label her either way. We each find different things energizing. And so notice, what do you find energizing? Notice what works for you. So that thing of your needs are valid even if no one else has the same need. Your needs are valid even if no one else approves of or signs off on your need. So you don't need someone to say, oh yes, that's valid. Oh, that's a good need. Oh yes, I approve of that. You are an adult. So I'm talking about how can we meet our needs in the context of our adult responsibilities. I'm not suggesting you throw up your whole life and you run away so that you can meet some needs. I'm suggesting that in the context of your adult life, which you've chosen, how can you get your needs met? And your need, it doesn't have to be approved of. It can feel like we need someone else to say, that's okay, you're not being difficult, or you're not being like that, or you're not being too however. But really, we have to stand in our truth and claim what we need and ask for it. If we parent in partnership, to ask for our partner to help us with meeting those needs, or if we need to hire a babysitter so we can get that need met. Really notice that that's sometimes the case. Your needs are valid, even if someone else thinks they or you are ridiculous, particular, or difficult. So other people in your life who may previously have benefited from you either people-pleasing or self-abandoning or always doing what they wanted may say you are ridiculous, or they may say you're a very difficult person, or you're really particular. And it is true that on a recovery journey, we may all go through a stage of being really difficult and of being really particular. And we often swing. So often what happens on a healing journey or recovery journey is we start off being very self-abandoning and people-pleasing and always giving over to the other. And then when we really notice our patterns and we see what we've been doing, we swing to the other side, and we then become very like, I'm not going to do anything that doesn't work for me, and very only meeting our own needs. And that's a place in the journey. And then often we kind of go past that stage because we realize that we often need to compromise, and we actually learn to have more capacity in our nervous system. So we have space to compromise. I remember I spent some time in CODA, which is Codependence Anonymous. And in that, I had a bunch of friends, and I noticed we were all in a stage of learning that we could change our minds and that we didn't have to stick to something that we'd said. And if we were really exhausted or something, we could cancel, we could change our minds. So there was a stage where lots of us would cancel lots of things all of the time because we were meeting our needs and kind of tending to ourselves and really noticing that that was important. And I've now moved into a different position where I actually now try not to cancel. If I've made something, I value reliability now. And so I also want to do that for friends and people I am meeting. And sometimes I do cancel if I'm, if something's happened or something, but I've kind of come back to the middle. I pendulated very far on one side and I've come back to the middle. And so you'll be somewhere on that continuum. You might be in a stage where you're very focused on only doing exactly what works for you. And then you might come back to the middle. And that's really a process that we go through. We have to kind of feel into what feels good in our relationships. And if we constantly change our minds and constantly cancel, for example, there might be a time when people get a bit tired of us. And so then we have a different set of consequences to deal with. And this is all learning. Now, none of this is kind of criticism, but it's we don't go from being very people-pleasing and very self-abandoning to suddenly being able to calibrate things in a flexible and kind of moderate way. We have to traverse the journey and see what works for us and go into a place of doing only exactly what pleases us for a while, if that makes sense. So even if someone is calling you difficult or ridiculous, you're allowed to meet your needs and you don't have to take that on board. Your needs are valid, even if they're in direct contradiction to your kids' or your partner's or your friends' needs. And yes, there may need to be some negotiation. So on some nights, I may want my husband to do bath time by himself because I'm feeling really exhausted, or I need to do something, or I need to do a piece of work, or I need to record a podcast episode, and he may not have the capacity that night. He may need me to be there too. So then we have to have a negotiation. My kids might have a need. So for example, in like the summer holidays, I find it kind of exhausting and tiring to have constant days of play dates. I like to have one day on where I've made a picnic and we're going to go out, and one day off to just have a more chill day at home where we'll probably go to the playground and we'll do something, but I don't have to make a picnic and take it out with me and do a lot of palavering in that way. But my kids would probably love it if we did something every day that was required me to make a picnic. But that's too much for me. That's too much. And maybe that sounds, I don't know, whatever that might sound to any of you, but that's what works for me in a way that I can maintain my own sanity. And there may need to be some negotiation. So you can kind of really, particularly with other adults, notice where there needs to be negotiation. And your needs are valid, even if it's not possible at this particular time, in this particular context, for them to be met. So sometimes I might have a need to go away for a week on a solo holiday. I've never done that actually, but sometimes I think that would be just so amazing. At this particular place in my life, it's not possible. I don't have grandparents who can come and look after my kids. I don't have people that I could send my children on holiday with. We don't have, my parents are both dead. My husband's parents live in France and wouldn't be able to kind of take our kids for a week. I don't think they could even look after them for a night. And so I have a lot of grief around that. When I go out to I don't know, we went to Wesley, which is a big garden, southwest of London. And I sometimes see one child with two parents, so their parents, and then two sets of grandparents. And that, in me, brings up so much jealousy and envy. I'm I wish I could have that. And I know that it also comes with fantasy because I have no idea what the relationships are like, in family groups that I observe. But I would so love to have that level of support, and we just don't have that. And so I can grieve that. I can notice, I have grief and anger about this, actually, a lot of sadness and grief and anger. And I can notice I have this need to go and have a solo break, or I'd love to go away for a solo break with my husband. And I can notice, okay, that's not possible in the context of our life at this time. Maybe one day it will be possible, but for now it's not. So how can I do smaller versions of that? And recently, my husband and I went away for one night. I was on a training course in central London, and we had one night away in a hotel, which was really lovely. And sometimes we've done lunch dates where you can get someone to look after your kids for 3 hours, and that's really lovely. So, it might not be the need that you really dream of, but I can still have that as an intention and something I'd like to do in the future. And think about what are the needs that you would like to be met in the future, and to kind of just acknowledge them. It's even helpful in a partnership. Together, my husband and I grieve this. We feel really sad about our family context, and I wish I could find some renter grannies or something, but not exactly renter grannies, but people who would like children in their life, and we would like older people in our life, because I think that there's such richness in intergenerational relationships, and I do have that in some relationships and spaces. But we can set intentions for the things that we'd like to bring in, and notice what we don't have, and still acknowledge the need. I find it comforting to just discuss this with my husband instead of brushing this away or pretending it's not there. So it's useful if you parent in partnership to notice that sort of thing around anything. Your husband or you may have a sporting, I don't know, maybe you do, what's a sport that you have to go far away for? I don't know, skiing or climbing down an ice crevasse. You probably can't do that if you live in England or the UK. You don't live near the Arctic Circle, so you can't do your going down an ice crevasse all the time. But you could go to a climbing wall. So there's just really ways that we have to acknowledge things between us and try and be creative in the way we meet those needs, and notice if there's sadness and grief, because from an emotional flow point of view, it's really important to notice that need and to have all the feelings around it regardless of whether it can actually be met. I hope that makes sense. Your needs are valid, even if you get societal messages that say they are not valid or that you are too much. Part of shifting our culture is using our power where we can. So if we think about the idea of patriarchal motherhood, the kind of construct of this mum who always wants to be with her children all the time and is endlessly patient and like loving and calm and all those sort of things, you might feel guilty, or you might feel shame about wanting to take time away from your children. You might feel bad for desperately wanting some peace and quiet. You may feel that you're not embodying some sort of like fantasy perfect mother, which might lead you to suppressing your needs or trying to suppress them or not being honest about them. And I really want you to kind of put that aside and not shame yourself for your needs. You're a real human. You've got real sensory needs. You are allowed to want something that someone else doesn't want. And you're also allowed to, part of breaking down this fantasy is not suppressing ourselves. You have to embody your full humanness and what you need to be a full human. Again, you might not be able to meet it in the short term, but really starting to be aware of that is really important. And your needs are valid, even if you experience shame in relation to your needs. The sense of shame will be speaking much more to your history and to how your needs were met in childhood and to how your parents paid attention to their own needs and your needs, the language used around needs, and generally, was there any space for you in childhood? So any shame that you carry now about your needs will be much more about that than about you as a person. Because often what happens is that people conflate, if they think they have got needs that are too big or too needy or cannot be met, somehow we make up that we're bad because that's the shame speaking. The shame tells us, it whispers to us that we're not good enough, that we have to do things to prove that we are good enough. So shame keeps us in a position of thinking that we're constantly not good enough. It's just a kind of a constant hum in our system. And starting to break down that shame is really noticing that your needs are valid. You don't have to demonstrate like worthiness to get your needs met, but it can be so painful initially when you realize how much self-abandonment has been playing in the ways that you tend to yourself. And so be really gentle with this as well, like when you start to notice this. So we're all going back to kind of the earlier bits I was saying about we're all different. So we naturally have different needs. When we've had a very intense day in my household, I like to chat about it endlessly and to kind of break it down and to make meaning of it. And my husband is different to me. When he's had a very intense day, he likes to sit on the sofa and he has a word that he says. He likes to just be, or he likes to just sit. And he doesn't like to talk too much. And he basically thinks we're having an intense conversation if I've been talking for like 30 seconds. I mean, not all the time, but when he's in that state. And I'm like, I haven't even got my sentence out. Can you just shush for a second while I tell you? And so we on the kind of contact boundary, we butt up against each other around that. And initially, because of my own abandonment stuff, when he was like that with me, I was like, oh my word, this relationship is definitely over. I would immediately jump to panicking. And I've learned over the course of many years that his need is he needs to kind of retreat inside himself and be quiet. He likes to have some chit chat, but he just can't have anything emotional because that feels too intense for him. And he's a more avoidant character than me, whereas I am much more contact seeking and more like my kind of origin attachment style is more anxious attachment or ambivalent attachment. And so I kind of want to seek out that contact. And so I've learned there's a lot of emotional depth that we have in our relationship, and we don't need to have it all the time. I could probably do emotional depth like 24/7 probably. And he's like a little bit less 24/7 than me. And so, like, I wouldn't be able to be with him if he didn't have the emotional depth and if he wasn't prepared to deepen more emotionally. But he just doesn't want to do it as much as me. And I can tolerate that. And so we meet in the middle, because sometimes I will be like, no, I need you to be at the contact boundary now. You can't kind of vacate the contact boundary. We need to talk about this. This feels really important to me. So sometimes he has to do that too. So in your adult relationship, notice, are your emotional needs being met? Is there enough emotional depth in your relationship? Or do you constantly feel like you're teaching about emotional depth? Notice that. Notice, are you held? Are you seen? Are you received? Are you accepted? Do you share, actually? Because sometimes it can be that in our relationships, we're not actually sharing what we need, and we're not sharing our vulnerabilities. So I really want you to, as the summer holidays come up, which in many countries are in the Northern Hemisphere, it's a very long break. I want you to really consider what your needs are. How can you maintain your sanity? Think about what is non-negotiable for you on a daily basis. So that might be things like, I need to have a certain amount of meals, I need to have a certain amount of snacks, I need to drink 2 lots of my big water bottle, I need to have a shower at some point, and I need 20 minutes for movement or half an hour for movement. Or it might be that I need to spend time with my children outside and I can do my movement with my children. So really, and then other needs that are sometimes maybe more flexible or more negotiable might be contact with your own friends, might be going to a solo yoga class, might be, depending on the age of your child, you may be able to do your own yoga class at home while they watch TV or do some other thing they do. Or you may be able to leave them at home and go to your yoga class, depending on their age. So really notice what helps you feel good, what helps you thrive on a daily basis in your life. And look at what helps you. Like, sometimes when we are disconnected from our needs and our humanity and our humanness has been shamed in our family, we may be so dissociated from things that we don't actually know, oh, what does actually help me feel good? So look back over your last couple of weeks and notice the days that you felt most invigorated. Like, what happened on the days where you got to the end of the day, where you got to bedtime and you still had energy, you had a good sense of humor, you were able to tolerate your kids' meltdowns without shouting too much, where you felt kind of joyful in the evening. What had happened on those days? Was that a day that you spent some time with a lovely friend, or you had really good time in nature, or you'd done some really stimulating work, which was really resourcing for you, or you'd had a day all by yourself? Like, what are those days where you just feel like joyful and grateful in the evening, and feel grateful for your life and your family and your connections and your friends? And then look at the days where you literally could have fallen on your sword at the end of the day and you could have think, I'm going to literally leave this family. Like, what happened on those days? Was it, sometimes that could be complicated by hormonal stuff. Maybe you hadn't eaten all day. Look at the days where you just thought, send me a different life. I don't know if any of you have those days. I have those days. So really notice those. And on those days, it's likely that your needs were not being met. And often when we're at the beginning of a healing journey, or even somewhere in the middle, we have to reverse engineer understanding what our needs are. So what I mean by that is we have to look back in time to notice, okay, that day was a literal shit show. Now, why was it such a shit show? And this day was just beautiful. Why was that so beautiful? What contributed to that? And how can I have more of that? So I really want you to, and obviously to acknowledge as well that there's a lot of horror going on in our world at this point in June 2025. And some of it is just so devastating that, it filters into everything. And so you may have a baseline at the moment of being in a lot of grief. So acknowledge that too. That's, you cannot control that. You can, still resource yourself or find people who you can talk about these things with so that you feel held and seen and supported in your community. Okay, so I would love it if you could go and leave a review for the podcast, please, if you find it supportive. And please go and have a look on YouTube. I would love to see you there. And Yeah. And now, just to also say something, so we're going into summer now, and I'm going to take a recording break from the podcast, and we will be back in September. I'm thinking whether I'll release other episodes in the next months. I'm not really sure about that, but it's likely that there'll be a recording break. And I'll be back to tell you more about how it's going from healing with chronic stress and some other health issues that we've kind of come up against. Okay, so I'm sending you lots and lots of love, and I hope that you can have a wonderful journey around meeting your needs and really discovering more about how to support yourself. Okay, take really good care.